Yngwie, welcome.
Thank you. Finally.
Finally.
Yes.
The first thing I want to ask you about is about string gauges, because you use a hybrid set.
Well, it all derives from when I was very, very young, and I would play all the time, and the strings would always break. So I'd go to the store and buy single strings when I had to. Right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I'd buy a full set. And I realized when I bought the full set, where there was an 8 or 9, sometimes a 10 even back in the day, the tension was never the same. So this string and this string would be different tension. In other words, the high ones would always be a lot more tension than the low ones. So that I decided, well, maybe I should have the thin ones, 8 ones here, and the thick ones on the bottom, and the whole guitar feels more balanced. That's basically how I came to this conclusion. This is a long time ago. Yes, 8, 11, 14.
Then 22, 32.
22, 32, 46, or 48, depending.
Okay.
Sometimes. And the cool thing is that on the back here, it's got the bullet end. So it's actually made for this block on a Stratocaster, you know. So it will stay in tune perfect.
A lot of people will be surprised that you use 8s. I always knew that you used thin strings. Tell me about the theory of this, though, as far as when you're playing things and how it feels with the pick. You're not a small guy, Yngwie. You got huge fingers, yet you use these thin strings. You like the control, though, of it, right?
Right. For the longest time, I heard there's a lot of theories that you hear, you know, as years go by, that put, oh, the thick strings give more this sustain or more this. It does not. Does not. Okay? What does make the guitar more alive is high action. And my action on my guitar is really considerably high. I mean, most people
I played it.
have a lot lower than this.
Yeah.
And that, because the string, from here to there, the string looks like this. Elliptical, like this. So if it doesn't allow it to vibrate like it should, that doesn't only buzz, but it actually kills the tone. But if you want to bend from C sharp to E, like that for instance, why would you want to kill yourself? You know, what's the benefit? There is no benefit.
No benefit.
Yeah.
Okay, you also said that if you get a nick in your pick, you immediately throw it away.
Yes, and that's because I do a lot of these. Like that type of thing. It's not sweep picking, folks.
Okay, explain that when you say it's not sweep picking.
It's alternate, down, 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 up, down. It's depending, you know, because it's not like this.
Right.
You know, and all of this comes from me always playing with my ears. I heard something, you know, like I heard a violin. Something like that. That's not a guitar lick,
right?
You know. And I just heard it from either Bach or Vivaldi or Paganini or something, you know. These things, and I heard it played on the violin or even on the piano, and I liked the cascading notes. I liked the vibrato. I heard that, and I said, I'm not doing it on the guitar. It was no one. Hey, I wonder if I look this up on internet. No, there was no such thing. As I was doing this, all I did was listening, because I would go in my studio, I would record it, and I would come back and listen to it, I would go home. And the funny thing was, in the late 70s, there was 2 cassette speeds, 7 inches or 7 point something other inches, and a Technics and a Philips in the studio in the house. So it's like quarter note difference.
Right.
So I would record every day, and the next day I would listen to it and go, oh, that's good. It was a little bit faster.
Okay.
So incrementally, everything was getting faster and faster for me, saying, I'm not going to not be better or faster than I was yesterday. So you hear something from 1977 or something, I would play that line, for instance, and that would, it would be faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. It's really crazy. But anyways, to get back to the long answer about the picking, I never thought about how I was holding the pick.
Okay.
I never thought about how I was dividing the picking
right.
up, down, this, that, whatever. I never thought about how I did this. Nothing. In 1983, I came to Japan. I've been playing guitar for a long time by then. And the Japanese interviewer goes, how do you hold your pick? And that was the first time
that you ever thought
I even looked down on my hand.
Right.
Oh, like this. you know. And it turns out it's something like this. I don't know.
And you use a really thick pick, 1.5,
Yes.
1.15, what is it?
1.5 millimeter Dunlop.
Yeah. And tell me why, though. You said this because you don't want any flexibility
Yes,
in the
because
pick.
if the pick bends,
Yep.
you have two brain hemispheres.
Yep.
Okay? One controls this hand, one controls this hand. And you want to play something like, let's say when this hand, your brain controls this hand and this hand to meet in coordination, if there's a flexibility in this pick, it's going to be a latency of milliseconds, but
Right.
still.
Yeah.
You know, so every time your hand does this, it's going to be, you know. And I realized that too. In fact, I used stone picks for a while. This way of playing guitar is so new. If you want to study classical violin, it's a 400-year-old
40
technique.
years, yes.
You know,
That's
the,
right.
the bowing,
And piano.
any instrument of that
That's
kind.
right.
You know, but this way of playing the guitar is not like a classical guitar because you don't play like this, and you know, and so it's so new. It's well, I guess you have to start thinking about like the late 50s, I guess, Chuck Berry.
Yeah.
And then you know Beck and Clapton and Hendrix and Van Halen and whatever. You know, it's like everybody's doing differently. You know, it's not a set way.
You and I talked about this, about Alan Holdsworth.
Yes.
Wanted to be a saxophonist, you were saying, and then you wanted to be a violinist.
Okay, so it's a little more complicated than that.
Okay.
Because I never want to be a violinist. I never want to be a classical guitar player. I want to play electric guitar with smoke bombs and flash pots and Marshall stacks.
Right.
Double bass drums. I never want to do anything else. But I felt that as much as I love Deep Purple and Sabbath and those bands, they're hard and heavy, but the note choices were 99% pentatonic.
Right.
And when I first started, I got my first guitar on my 5th birthday. And when I was 7, on the day Jimi Hendrix died, they showed on the news that today Jimi Hendrix died, and they showed him burning the guitar at Monterey Pop. I said, wow, that's cool. So I took the guitar off my wall and I started playing. But I wanted to play rock and roll. And the first thing I heard, and I wasn't even aware of who it was Eric Clapton, because my mom had a record called John Mayall and the Bruce Breakers.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't know what it was. I was 7 years old. I thought it was great. I said, oh, I like this, you know. And then when I was 8 years old, I heard Deep Purple Fireball, which starts with double bass drums,
Yeah.
which is sick, you know. You can understand, too, where I grew up in Sweden at the time, obviously no MTV, there was no internet, it was nothing. It was literally, it was one TV channel from 6 to 10 p.m. So when I got that album for my birthday, Deep Purple Fireball, it wasn't like, oh yeah, I like that better, it's better than Sabbath and let's. No, there was nothing else.
That's all you heard.
That's all I heard. But I did hear Selling England by the Pound by Genesis.
Genesis, yeah.
Yeah. And when I heard that,
Yeah.
I discovered something that's called pedal tones. Very slow. But still, you know, the Tony Banks.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't listen to the guitar player, but Tony Banks, the stuff, the inverted, suspended, yeah, all that suspended, diminished, all this stuff. I was like, whoa, this is cool. And I realized what I liked about that was Johann Sebastian Bach. And my mom had like 1,000 Bach records. So I would just go through them. I even remember the first record I picked up. It was D minor concerto, Cembalo concerto. And it went like, oh no, sorry, that's mine. Something like that.
Yeah.
I love the sound of rock, the sound, you know, the stacks and the stuff like that. I don't want to play classical violin.
How did you start incorporating these ideas, though? Did you just
Mostly
listen to
by
the
just
records?
listening to it and get the feel. And I was already aware of the scales,
Yep.
and the modes and keys, and I knew that each key starts on a root and then a root, and these are the notes you have to play, and these are the notes you don't play.
Right.
I had that very early on.
Right.
Yeah. So I learned how to listen and pick things up extremely fast. It was figures that I like this thing, pedal notes, for instance. That could be, or pedal note could be a lot of different things. This is da 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 da. you know, whatever you want to do.
First time I heard you, and I heard you play those pedal lines like that, so clean and so fast. I thought, how's he do that? And then I see videos of you playing, and your right hand is so, it looks like you're hardly even doing anything.
I'm not.
You're not.
No, I figured that, you know, again, I never thought of it that way until so many people started analyzing.
Yeah.
It wasn't like it happened overnight, you know. I mean, I was freak. I'm talking a freak. I literally didn't do anything but play guitar. It was crazy.
Okay, so when did you first play a Strat and a Marshall together?
Many of the youngsters watching this probably don't know this, but brands like Ibanez, Aria Pro, and many others, some called Osaka and, you know, Rickemann or whatever, they made Strat copies.
Yes.
And they were exact.
Yeah.
I mean, they were exact.
Yeah.
And they were maybe $300, something like this. I bought them, and I had them, and I scalloped them and everything like this. And then when I was about 12 or 13, I had a summer break, and my mom says, we got to paint our house. I said, oh, how much are you paying the painters? 2,000 krona, which is $250, whatever. Probably was more at the time. I said, get the paint, get the brushes, I'll paint the house. Big 2-story house, all summer long, on ladders. I painted this thing. And I went to the store, and I pointed at the guitar I've been looking at all summer. It looked exactly like this. This color, this neck, everything. And the guy says, it's 2,600 krona. I had 2,400. He says, that's $50, that's $40. No, it was less, like $20 maybe, something like this. The guy goes, no, you know, it's a corporate price. And, come on, man, I worked all summer. You gotta give me the guitar. No. I'm like, and he goes, oh, I got this. And he goes behind, it's not even hanging on the wall. He says, I got this old one, it's 68. You can have that. and I go, I'm going like, oh no. I went home bumming out that I had to buy a 68 Strat instead of a 75 Strat. The first thing that happened when I got the guitar was I thought the pickups were terrible. Mm-hmm. I was like, what's wrong? There's something wrong with it, you know. I just found out that unfortunately that's where they were.
What about the scalloping? When did that?
Yeah, that was another thing too. Since I was playing guitar all the time, I didn't go to school. Mm-hmm. So they said, oh, we got this luthier in the city. You could be apprentice there. And that would count as, you did, you know, Sweden didn't have homeschooling.
Right.
You go to school, it's a law, you know.
So it's apprentice.
So I went there, and these guys were in lab coats.
Okay. And
they work on Stradivarius violins and stuff like this, and Nurek things too. I remember one guy came in with an Explorer with a busted headstock, and they fixed it. You couldn't even see the wood grain, nothing. It was sick. So one day a 17th century lute came in, and the neck had these really weird cutouts, like this. I said, I'm going to try this. I just like it. I did one of those crappy guitars. I did on one of them. I said, well, nice, you know. So I started doing it on all of them. Do the half-round file, just go, yeah.
Okay, so what did you notice when you scalloped the
What I noticed was that so when you get the note,
yep,
the string goes deeper into your fingertip. You're not supposed to push it down like a sitar, you know. But so it's the same effect as having really tall frets. But what I do is I put the extremely tall frets, the Dunlop 6100s, mm-hmm. or whatever, whichever one is the biggest one they have. The one you can run a train over.
Right.
And scallop. So more is more.
You scalloped your fingerboard on your 68 or no?
No, that 68, I went back and traded it for this guitar, the one that looked like this, the next week.
Okay.
I put some money together. So I gave a 68 for a 75.
Okay.
Because it was new. I remember when I took it home, I didn't scallop down until later on. Like that was, right around that time.
Okay, so the Marshalls, you have about 1 million Marshall amps. When you're playing on stage, how many Marshalls do you have?
What I bring with me on my last tour was 52 heads.
Okay.
And I think it was 24 cabinets. I'm not sure. I can't remember the exact.
Okay, when did you get your first Marshall, and why do you play plexis? Tell me about this.
So in 74 or 75, somebody at Marshall finally realized why people bought their amps.
Okay.
It was because of the distortion. The problem is, with a 4-input Marshall like that, if you don't turn it all the way up, it doesn't distort.
Right.
So what they did is split the preamp and the power amp levels. So you could have the power amp literally not working and the preamp full.
Right.
And they're also called master volume amps.
Yes.
When they came out, they sold everybody wanted them. I took advantage of that because those 4-input ones that are now very valuable.
Yes.
All of a sudden, they use them for old boat anchor,
How much did you buy those for?
Like $30.
You told me that last night, and I was laughing at that. That's insane.
And I one time I had a Boss pedal. Mm-hmm. Nothing wrong with Boss pedals. I traded it for Mark II 50 watt. Yeah, which is it looks like that, but it's a 50 instead. Not the small one, it's a big one.
Yeah.
Also, I love the gray front Marshall. The gray front, and they weren't popular either. Everybody wanted the black one, so I ended up getting the gray ones, which I really preferred anyway. Then later on, I realized that these amps here are superior because they have what's called a linear signal. Like your input signal is linear. If you have something you can change the preamp and power amp relation, it will go like this. So your EL34s are not working, but your preamp is. So you get half the, because I don't know if you can tell here, but you're supposed to have like this oomph thing, which is coming from the power amp.
And you also prefer 75 watt Celestials.
Yes, I do.
Because why?
There's a concept that again, it didn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
Some people like to have these super distortion pickups, like hot pickups. So it's basically a dirty signal from the guitar.
From the guitar, yeah.
And then they have whatever they use, and then I like the greenbacks because the 25s and 30s and stuff. So you get some cone distortion, and I don't like that because I like clean signal from the guitar.
Yep.
The amp takes all the distortion, and the representation of that is moving a lot of air. These 300 watt cabs will move a lot of air. So that's just a concept, like start clean, end clean, basically, and then your dirt is in the middle.
Okay, so going back to learning stuff, you said you learned scales on your own.
Not quite on my own, because I grew up in a household where people would talk about modes and scales. My uncle and my aunt, opera singers in the Royal Opera.
Okay.
And they would play the piano and sing all day long. It was almost like you would be ashamed of not knowing exactly what note on wherever each note's called.
Okay.
I know there's a lot of rock and rollers that don't care about that. And that's fine. But the way I grew up, that was sort of like, it's E flat right here. Yeah. So
Okay, but scales, arpeggios, all that stuff. You're just figuring these things out on your
own.
own.
Well, to me, it was kind of easy because if you want to make it very simplistic, first of all, you can hear when it's the wrong note. That's the most important thing.
Hopefully.
In fact, when I was from like 10 years old, I used to live in the music stores. I used to take tube into the town. I would be in Soundside, Musikbuschen, whatever. The great stores, they had everything. And I would sit there, plug in, I would like play, and sometimes they would tell me, turn down, you're scaring away the customers. And then sometimes it would be kids coming in. I'm not knocking anybody, I'm just saying like how I, from the very beginning, played with my ears.
Yeah.
I would have kids, there were kids who would come in with their dad or whatever, and they would plug in and would play. They would bend the string because that was, it's cool to bend the string, but they would bend the string not to a note that you want to hear,
Right.
And I used to call them Soundside guitar players because the store was called Soundside. And that was the first thing that I realized, that if you want that the bend the string has to be the same note, wherever you do. And, same thing with vibrato. I was always very conscious about the vibrato. I don't like a fast one, And once I realized, how the notes are in the scales, and if it's minor and a major, it's the same thing. A minor and C major is the same thing. And then you can go into a little more advanced stuff like A minor, harmonic minor. Mm-hmm. It's the same as E Phrygian. And the E Phrygian in the major third, you can do diminished. It's like a puzzle, but it's not, because it's all simple, it's math. So it didn't take me very long to figure that out. It was just a matter of me figuring out different figures, different patterns within.
Okay, so when did you start becoming aware of other rock bands and things like that?
So when I grew up in school, there were rock bands that were popular. There was a band called The Sweet,
Okay.
which I thought were pretty good. You know.
Yeah, I remember Sweet.
Kiss, everybody loved them.
Yep.
Alice Cooper, Status Quo.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'd never heard Sabbath. I never heard Led Zeppelin.
Okay. Why?
No, I don't know. But every kid in school had a Made in Japan. Deep Purple Made in Japan. There wasn't one kid that didn't have them. You know. And then when I got a little older, we'd go to parties, you know. You go to a little, so it's like, he said, we have a party, you know, oh, whatever. You go to a party, we'd always have music going on. And then I would hear, they would play Thin Lizzy.
Yeah.
Thin Lizzy was good. I like them.
Wait a minute. I wonder if it's because Led Zeppelin and Sabbath, did they not tour in Sweden?
I have no idea. Another freaky thing is that when I came to America in 1982,
Yep.
I never, ever heard of Foreigner.
Okay.
I never heard of Journey.
Wow.
Can you believe this?
No, I can't
I mean,
believe
these
that.
guys are like, and I love both of them. I think they're
Yeah.
amazing. But I never heard of them. It wasn't because I wasn't, because it's in the music. I was
Yeah.
everywhere. You know?
Yeah.
Back then, music groups and acts had very selective markets.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. I was actually, I became a bit of a snob. I had gone to that point where I was really like, rock and roll, no. I listened to Johann Sebastian Bach, Antonio Vivaldi, Nicola Paganini, that's it. For one exception, my drummer brought a record to the studio. Oh, this is a new band, you gotta hear this. I was not interested. I look at it. This guy's playing a new Strat, it's got a black pickguard. I was like, totally picky. We listened to the album, Van Halen 1. It was like somebody dropped a fucking bomb, you know.
Yeah.
And it was so good.
Yeah.
So that really knocked me out. But the funny thing is, like, it wasn't the Eruption solo. It wasn't the amazing guitar playing that really knocked me out. It was their attitude. Like, we're going in the studio, we're recording live.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me, it was just such an inspiration. I like that a lot, you know. So I basically decided I will also record everything live from now on, you know.
When did this term neoclassical
I didn't
happen?
make it up.
I know. When did people start saying it? Though?
Well, so there's a funny. I'm going to jump a little bit forward, a little time space continuum here.
Yep.
In 1983 or January '84 or something like this, I was in Japan with another band, and the label in Japan freaked out. They freaked out, and they said, "We must give you a solo record." Okay, cool. You know, whatever. I like that. So I got a solo deal, and I was still touring with this band, right? And I would go home for one day, and I would record the solo. And actually, I took about a week to do the basic tracks. We recorded with Stevie Wonder's mobile truck. It's really funny. I had drummer from Jethro Tull on there. And then I had to go back and do some solos and stuff like this. And then the band I was in, it was an inevitable demise, you know. I had to go because it wasn't working out. And I went back to the studio and I finished this solo album, the first one. Mm-hmm. And then I started what was supposed to be my first album. Because this solo album was a Japanese only deal.
Okay.
But during this time, that first recording hit the Billboard charts without promotion, without being properly released. It was only on import. You had to go and order it in a record store back then. A record store, pay $80 or something, and wait for 2 weeks to get it. And just from that, it sold enough to go top 50 or something crazy like this. That the label decided we have to release this. So when this album came out, it had a very big impact, which wasn't, I didn't expect that at all. I just threw some shit on it, you know. My old songs, basically, except a couple of new ones. And that's when I first heard the term neoclassical.
What did you think when you heard that term?
I didn't think much about it. I didn't think much either way, you know.
Right.
I mean, to me, it's just, it's not important. It's the weirdest thing because all my life in Sweden growing up, I'm like, so determined and relentless, and it's like I'm gonna do this, and everybody was saying, ha ha ha, you're never gonna make it, you know. The Swedish people, well, you know, you better get a real job, you know, you're never gonna make it with, like, you know, you can't play that, you can't play those things, You got to play normal stuff.
Right.
And I just decided to be even more crazy and more heavier and faster, whatever. When I first came to the States, I remember like it was yesterday, I joined a band called Steeler for, I think I was in the band for about 2 weeks. But it was very fast, 2 weeks, you know. We do a show at called Reseda Country Club. It was 30 people there.
Okay.
The next couple of days, or weekend, or whatever, it was just only a few days later, we're playing the Troubadour. And I'm standing, tuning up like this, looking down the window, and I see the line cross the block, around the whole street. I'm like, wow. Somebody working, I say, hey, who's playing tonight? And the guy goes, you are. And it was the craziest thing. One show in front of 30 people. And we played the Roxy, Whiskey, wherever. That's every night.
So after all these years of you being told, get a job.
The weirdest thing was, when I was still in Sweden, I couldn't get a record deal. Nobody could take me seriously, but I had fans. Mm-hmm. We would do shows. We'd have flash pots and burning guitars and stuff.
Okay.
We'd be able to play in schools and cinemas and youth centers and stuff. And so would always be a bunch of people coming to shows. But, you know, it was like back then it was, that was called a new wave of British heavy metal. Became a popular thing. Everybody had a leather jacket and a Saxon badge or something, you know. Mm-hmm. So they dug what I was doing. So it wasn't nothing, you know. But it didn't translate into anything. But there was 2 things that happened right before I left. I got invited to play a festival.
Okay.
Called Woodstockholm. Yeah. 3 days. Listen to this. Only signed artists.
Okay.
Only signed artists, like middle of the road stuff. No metal. Nothing.
Okay.
I was on this thing.
Woodstock.
I didn't get a sound check. Nothing. It was, yeah. And so I get, you know, it was me. I was the guitar player and singer and the bass player and drummer. You know, we play heavy metal basically.
Yeah.
But like this. And we do the show, and I didn't really get any vibes from nothing, you know, nothing like that. There's 2 newspapers in Sweden, Aftonbladet and Expressen. So next morning I'm walking to it's like a 7-Eleven kind of thing. And in Sweden they used to have, whatever was the headlines, they would have like plastered on the walls everywhere. The headline news were like a poster, you know.
Right.
Rock show of the year. So what, you know. I go in to buy something in a convenience store, and it's 2 stands. And there's on the front cover of one of them, I see this guy with long hair and a white strat. I'm like, that's weird. And I'm like looking at him, then I'm gonna buy something. I look a little closer, I go, fuck, that's me. I couldn't believe it. Out of all those 40 bands, they put me on the cover. I open up the things, like the whole thing like this.
Nice.
And I was going, whoa. I bought every paper they had, you know. I thought, I made it. And nothing happened, you know. So a few months later, I got a guy, a producer from CBS. He decided to give me record a single, 45. I thought, wow, this is really, you know, it's getting somewhere. And I recorded 3 songs instead of 2. And he said, oh, it's great, but you need to sing in English. It's Swedish. I said, I'm not doing that. If I didn't leave, I would have. I don't know what would have happened. I really don't know. I mean, I know it's different now. Now it's all the bands in the world from there.
Right.
But not
so
when I grew up, there was nothing. Nothing.
So what year was that? 82 you came here?
Yeah.
How long did it really take? I mean, you pretty much took off immediately then.
It did, yeah. It was crazy.
We talked about this last night, about improvising. About playing your solos and how important that is to play your solos improvised.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
When I grew up, it was sort of like an automatic, you know. It's improvisation. It's like if you're a musician, you improvise.
Right.
And I realized later that wasn't always the case, you know. But for me, it was like a natural thing. And the challenge of always like an instant composition, basically. You know, either it's gonna come out nice or it's gonna come out really bad. And the whole thing is like that you throw yourself over a cliff like Wile E. Coyote, you know, and you want to, take the chance to do it good. And I'll do it every night different. And in the studio, I do it different. So if I do a solo in the studio, I do 1 take, maybe 2, and I don't listen back to them. I just let them be, and then listen to them in the car later, a few days later, whatever. And it'll be immediately, I'll know if there's something there, you know. But, and then whatever that solo is, I don't play it the same
Right.
on the stage.
Did you notice that other people played the same solos all the time?
I did, yeah.
And what did you think about that?
I just thought it was weird. For me, I mean, it was so weird. Well, why would you do that, you know? Because what a lot of people don't know, they don't realize, is that the classical composers, Bach, Vivaldi, Mozart, Paganini, they are improvised. Beethoven.
Right.
When it says cadenza,
That was improvised.
That's improvised.
That's right.
But they had to write something down. You know, it's like when you tape something, a live performance, you tape that, but that's not what's going to happen the next night. In fact, I made a pretty deliberate example of that. I recorded 2 shows, 24 hours apart, and I recorded one for a video, one for a live album. So you can hear Far Beyond the Sun and all these songs being played 24 hours apart, and it's not one note the same.
If you're playing live and people come and see you night after night and you're playing different things, then you're kind of inspired by what's happening in the moment, and the people get a unique experience. And you would think that that's kind of an important thing.
Yeah, I think there's 2 ways to look at it. I think some people might want to go look at a performance of what they hear on the album, you know. Some people might like that.
Right.
To me, that sounds something you would expect from a top 40 band, you know.
Okay.
But the original band that does it, for some, I don't know. Listen, I'm not. If you want to do it that way, that's fine. It's just for me, it's kind of weird, you know, because I think there's no challenge in that.
Okay, now were you trying to always stretch your playing new things? How did you work on things? Like, were you just practicing all the time, even during this
never
whole period?
practiced.
You never practiced?
I never practiced once
Okay.
in my life. Every time, if I was sitting in my bedroom when I was 8 years old, when I was playing like I was performing. And I was expecting to be blown away by what I was doing. I was expecting to impress myself. I would never accept, like, for instance, if I recorded something and it was a spur of the moment thing and it was really good, I couldn't really do it again. I could never accept that. You know, I would always have to be better.
Now, I know that you're not really influenced by other guitar players, but there must be some guitar records that you're a big fan of, or
Of course.
later on. Give me some examples
Of course. Holdsworth. I mean, I remember I walked into a record store and they were playing something on the air, in the system there. And I was going, oh my God, what is this? It was UK.
First record.
It was insane. I mean, this is in the dead of night, you know.
Yeah.
It was incredible. But listen, I love Eric Clapton, I love Blackmore, and Angus Young, and Brian May. I think all of them, they're all great. It's a weird thing because I think that the whole thing about blowing up Marshalls and having big, you know, the big sound basically, that came from hearing rock and roll early on, and I never want to get away from that. So that's obviously an influence there.
And you've always produced all your records.
Yes.
Okay, so how did you know how to produce records? Because you played all different instruments, right? And you know what they were supposed to sound like.
The trick is to walk away. Mm-hmm. When you work on something for a long time, when I do vocals or other takes of other things, I want to make it like really tight and really, you know, tune and that's different because that's sort of like just building a. There's no variable there really.
Right.
You know, it's just really this is what it's gonna be. Solos is a different thing. Solos is like, you know, I remember way back in the day I would do a solo and people like clap their hands and shit. I said that sucked. You know, I want to be knocked out myself. I want to have somebody say that's good. You know, I don't want that.
Okay, so tell me how your guitar setup has changed since the 80s. Have things changed that much?
Not really, no. When I started using these plexis,
Yep.
I realized obviously there was not enough gain in them.
Yep.
Once again, I went to Soundside, and the guy goes, try this. It was some handmade pedal from Salt Lake City, Utah. Yeah?
Okay.
It was a gray DOD 250. And they were handmade back then, in the late 70s, like 77, 78, something like this. And I plugged it in, I love this. And I used that forever. I used that one and the 50 and 100 watt plexis. Same exact thing. I used it from 77 or 78 until 1989 when somebody in the Soviet Union stole that pedal There's still nothing else, just that pedal.
They knew how good it was.
You know, I tried different things, and then DoD actually came to me and they made my model, but as a black one of that. And then we stopped doing that, and now we have a Fender that's based same thing. So it really is no difference, you know. The pickups have changed. Oh, that's a good one. I gotta tell you that.
Yeah.
So when I grew up in Sweden, there's 50 cycles, 220 volts, and the pickups didn't hum that much, single coils.
Yeah.
So when I came to America, it started humming like crazy.
Right. You think,
somebody
what's
got me
going
in touch with Steve Blucher at DiMarzio.
Yep.
This is like late 82 or like 83. And he was, oh, don't worry, I'll send you a PAF. I'll send it right to you. And no, but no, I don't want to do that. And I said, why don't you take two coils and put them on top of each other like this?
Stacked humbucker.
Yeah, they didn't exist then.
Right.
So they did. They sent me one called HS1, humbucker Strat 1. I said, that's not good. I mean, it was anemic.
Okay.
They sent HS2. I said, no, sorry, man, that's not that good. And then they sent HS3. I said, oh, really? I mean, we got to do better than this. That's the best we can do. So for 20 years, I used that pickup. That was quiet, but it didn't really sound like what I wanted to sound like, yeah? Then 2008 or somewhere, I was at a NAMM show. Evan Scott from Seaman Duncan came to me. I know you use the Morses, but let me make you something. I said, okay, whatever. And they sent me a set of pickups that were dead quiet. But they sounded exactly like Fender pickups.
Wow.
And I said, no, that's not what I'm looking for. And I tried to explain what I'm looking for. They sent a different whine, and then a different whine. And they would send it to me in the mail. I would glue, solder it in,
right.
Play in the studio, call them up. No, you need a little more, the response on the highest fret, they're not exactly what I'm looking for. Okay, so we changed the magnet to this, or whatever, you know. And they did 46 variants.
Okay.
Until I liked it. So this is an AGS 46.
46 variations.
Yes.
So you...
And this one are 3 different pickups. And then on top of that, I said I want the plastic of the cover to be exact like a 1972 Stratocaster. Which is from the factory, gray. It's not white. It's not yellow, it's not aged, it came from the factory, this color. And they had to do different palettes of colors for like, I don't know.
Drove them crazy, right?
I think
that's not
so.
right. It's not right.
I think so.
I want to ask you about your Marshall that you have, your signature
Yes.
Marshall. So that was based on what? Now, you told me this last night. Was it based on a 200 watt?
No, the box is like
The
a
box
200
is the
watt
size
because
of 200 watt.
it's a really fat,
Yeah.
deep one. Yeah.
Got it.
It's a funny story because I was at NAMM again, and I was at the Marshall display,
Yep.
and it was a picture, like a cardboard cutout of someone else, I'm not going to mention name, someone else that had them all holding up like this, and I started saying as a joke to I think it was my tech, what the fuck is this, man? Can I say that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you just did.
That should be me, man. I've been using Marshall since I was 9 years old. What the hell is this? Then John Ellery is standing right next. I didn't know John Ellery was standing there. He goes, well, but start working on it then. A couple of months later, I'm at the Marshall factory in Milton Keynes, and they told me to make a draft of what I want.
Yep.
I took a picture of one of my 50 watts and my 200 watt on top, as you see. Yeah, see how boxes like that wide. And then I said I want the amp to be made exactly like a 1959 Super Lead. But, in other words, if you plug in there and you put the speakers out, that's nothing. It's completely unmolested. That's all it is.
Yeah.
But there's some stuff in the front of the amp, some stuff on the back of the amp that I want to add. So on the front, I wanted to look exactly like this. So there's buttons on the back of the amp. It looks like this, the same panel, same buttons.
Yeah.
And there's one that's a switch. It says 50, 100. So you can turn 2 tubes off, get 1987 sound.
Yep.
Or 959 sound. There's also a volume knob behind there, but it's not a master volume. It's a power soak that is added to the back of the power amp. At the front of the amp, that is not activated on, so it's completely bypassed, is actually an overdrive and a gate and a digital reverb.
But it's only one input that engages it, is that right?
No, it's buttons on the back.
Buttons on the back.
They're
got
built in. Everything's inside the amp.
it. Okay, why the bigger box?
Well, number one, I love the way they look.
Yep.
And it turned out with all the stuff we put extra, it turned out to be necessary too, because of it's a lot more in there.
I notice all your cabinets are so perfectly stacked on stage. Has to be perfect, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, all the way to the front, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah. But the thing with those fat heads, they are as deep
They're
as
as
the
deep
cabinet.
as the cabinet.
They're automatically like that.
Do you think the kids that only play through these modelers and never really experience playing with a live amplifier, is there anything that they miss?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
The elephant.
The elephant, yeah, of course.
Talk about the elephant.
Yeah, the elephant on stage, if you stand from my amps and you do this, it's going to sound like an elephant. Like, completely uncontrollable distortion and feedback and stuff. You know, it's just, you have to control it like a big elephant. And if you don't have that, it's not enough gain, in my opinion. But to quote my friend Tosin Abasi, he stood in front of my Marshall stacks when we played together. And he said, like, dude, you can feel this sound, man. You can feel it. Like, it's like, no, you don't hear it, you feel it. It's like a physical sound. I was like, yeah.
If you were to play something, right? Like if you're going to just sit down and play, tell me what you first do when you sit down and play the guitar.
No, it's not a set thing.
You just improvise, right?
Yeah.
But there's nothing that you, you know, like you're thinking like, oh, maybe I should work on something like this.
No, I think that I just go from 0 to 60,
Yeah.
like right away, you know. I mean, right away, and I come up with something that's kind of cool. I record it right away, you know. But I don't have a set way of doing it. It could be anything.
Do you record memos on your phone?
I sometimes do, yeah.
Okay, so what is your red distortion pedal that you have there?
It's made by Fender, and it's an overdrive pedal, but it's very simplistic. It's got 2 knobs on it, and I just put them all the way up.
And is it volume and no tone?
No.
You don't believe in
Volume
tone?
and gain. I don't believe in that. I think it's an extra. In fact, I disconnect all the tone controls from my guitars.
Okay.
All of this is roll-off treble. What's the point?
Okay, and how do you set your Marshall typically?
The first channel all the way up, bass on 0, middle right up, like 12 o'clock, treble 12 o'clock, and presence 12 o'clock. Not all the way up.
And do you find that Marshalls are pretty consistent? The Plexi style amps are pretty consistent sound wise.
I do.
And you prefer a 50 or 100 watt, or doesn't it matter?
I used to prefer the 50 for some reason, but I don't hear them so good now.
Interesting.
And I split. I have Marshalls all across the stage, not only on my side. So it's really loud everywhere.
I've heard that about your shows.
When we did Generation X, they were going, why do you have an amp on my side? Well, that's always have my amp on Nuno and Zach's side. So that turned that one down a little bit.
If you're going to tell me something to practice to improve my right hand here.
One simple thing would be like, if you want, like, you do something legato, for instance. Like that. But all of a sudden you want to just start picking.
Yep.
If it doesn't sound synchronized, you're doing something wrong. So, for instance. So what note do you want to hear? And does this? Did I know it actually come out right? You know, and then you have to work on it. It can't happen overnight.
Okay, so you play drums. You've told me.
Absolutely. I used to record a lot of the songs in my early days. I played the drums first, and I played other parts, you know, stuff like this. Even with my favorite drummer of all time, Costa, I would even suggest parts of him, which was actually derivative of his playing. So it was kind of a funny thing. Same thing with. My concerto suite, for instance, I composed all the parts of all the instruments, every single one, not just the guitar part.
So you really have the sound in your head.
I hear it completed. I even hear the snare drum sound.
Okay.
I'm very specific about snare drum sounds. You can't have no ring, no ping. I don't like the note in there. I hear. Oh yeah, that's snare drum sound, or I'm not triggering a 9mm Beretta for that hit snare. It's going, bah! You know, I hear all that stuff. It's already done in my head.
Okay, when you mic your cabinets, usually mic with 1 or 2 microphones. Tell me about your preferred recording thing for guitar.
The way I have my setup in my studio is that I have a control room with a console and all the outboard gear and stuff, and all the heads. It's a bunch, probably 45 heads in there. And there's a panel on the wall with speaker
go-throughs.
Yeah, right. And they're hardwired down to a place. It's called the Room of Doom, which used to be a servant's quarter. You know, the house is built back in there when they had servants. You know, and I just gutted that, and it's called the Room of Doom, and that's all the speakers. And the microphone has the same things on the panels.
Yep.
And they go out of there to my, you know.
Are all the cabinets mic'd up?
No, two.
Two of them, okay.
Yeah. And it's very simple. I like the room. A Marshall, by the way, a big part of a Marshall is the room. That's why when I play like my last tour I just did now, I played some super nice theaters. The Tobin Center in San Antonio, the Parker Playhouse, Fort Lauderdale. Nice sound. Your guitar, you don't have to put nothing on it. It just projects out. So when you record a guitar, which is one of the most difficult things, I always thought it was the hardest thing to get the sound right on a guitar. Because what you hear, it's not, your ear is not there, is it?
That's right. It is not.
You know, you hear this.
Yeah.
And but you don't want too much slap. You want it to be tight. You know, it's a bit tricky. So I figured around here, and I used to use 57s, no more.
Okay, so what are you using now? Lewitt's, okay.
Yeah, it goes through 1176 and the Rupert Neve 215, the Focusrite that was actually made by Rupert
Blue
Neve.
Focusrite.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was built by Rupert Neve.
Yeah.
And the settings, I can't remember exactly what they are. But it's such a smooth sound. I look at this sound. The distortion is like almost like a sand core, sand grains, you know. And you want it as less grainy as possible. It's like a single note, you know, you know. You don't want zzz in that, you know. And the compression is always doing wonders on that. But it's also about where you put the cabinet and where you put the microphone and all these things.
People used to think that you didn't play with a lot of distortion because your playing was so clean.
It's nuclear plant, you know. It is ridiculous. It's like it's plutonium, you know. It's insane how much of gain it is. But you just have to be very selective with how you play so it doesn't notes don't go into each other.
Right.
You know.
How has making records changed? I always ask people this. From the 80s to today.
I used to hate going to the studio. I used to hate it.
Why?
Even if you weren't inspired, you had to play. And if you made a mistake, you couldn't fix it.
Right.
And if you fixed it, the new version could be worse.
Right.
So it's a horrible psychological thing.
Right.
It's terrible. But in 1995, I decided to take my recording advance instead to go to Criteria. I love Criteria, don't get me wrong. I took that money that would have cost to go in there, and I had John Arthur, Chris Sangarides, and those guys design the studio. Decided exactly what gear we're going to put in with a Studer and all the tube gear that I told you about, the 76s and TLAs, whatever they call it. And that made a huge difference because I could go in there whenever I felt like there was no time running. And it was always ready. It wasn't like, oh, you got to set up the gear and then record, you know. But the biggest difference, I think, was when I realized that when I came up with something spontaneously, I can record it right there, and it can go on the record.
Right.
Whereas before, you would write something, record on a little cassette recorder or something, go in the rehearsal room, knock it out, then go in the studio, put down with a sympathy code, you put the drums down, and you put the bass down, the guitars. But wait, I want 16 more bars here. Too late. That is so not conducive to being creative. You know?
Right.
But, I don't know, 15 years ago or something, yeah, I changed to Pro Tools. And I don't use Pro Tools as anything but a recorder. It's just a recorder. But when I realized, with my engineer, I said to him, hey, you know, that chorus, how about if we solo out the chorus there? It's a cappella. And put that in front of the song. Okay. Wow, that's cool. Let's put an end too. And then, you know, I want a different verse here. You know, just move it here. When I realized you could do that, my creativity just exploded. And it's still a real studio. It still has, you know, the wood floor and this big console and, you know, everything real. It's not like, oh yeah, I must make an album with a mouse now, like some people do. I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying I can't do it. Have you seen that movie, The Rocker, when he rolls around the console like this?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's me.
But you still, if you're
I have to have it.
But you like to go into you'll go into Criteria to record drums or places like that occasionally, or no?
I was,
Yeah.
but not anymore. I realized that the best drum sounds are the ones that just you use samples. To me, that is just no comparison.
Right.
You talk about multi-track recording, you talk about control, you're talking about how you want to make everything perfect in recording studio. If you have a guy, technically the guy is playing 10 instruments in the same room at the same time.
Right.
If you solo out the tom mic, what do you get? You get cymbals, you get the snare.
Right.
But you want to EQ just the tom. Tough shit, right? You want to just compress it and you start sawing the leg off the table and it's, no. It's a nightmare. I hate it and I'm never going to do it again. Get a Black Beauty sample. Done. And I love it.
What is there left to do for you? Like, what do you have left to do?
I'm going to get on a plane.
Yep.
I'm going to go to Miami.
Yep.
And I'm going to drive some Ferraris around.
Okay.
And then I'm going to go on tour again. No, seriously. To me, every day is a new day. And they ask me sometimes, what was your best show ever? The next one. The one I'm going to do next. What's your best album? The one I'm going to do next. So I never feel so much about, well, I've done this, I've done that. What should I do now? It feels to me like everything is new all the time. And I think that's because improvisation is a big part of that. That's why I can go on stage 40 nights in a row and not get bored with it. I do other things too outside the music that kind of like makes the music more inspirational when I go into it again. I have the freedom of going in the studio whenever I want, so on. I'm very, very lucky, man.
Well, it's been incredibly cool having you here. I
My
really
pleasure.
appreciate it. When I come down to Miami,
Yes.
You're going to take me out in your Ferrari, right?
You got it, bro.
Can't wait. Thanks.
Thank you, man.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.